The last secure communication link from the human frigate Last Stand dissolved into a burst of electronic noise. On the main viewing deck of the Xylosian dreadnought Indomitable, Commander Thrax's antennae twitched with satisfaction. The human ship, outnumbered and outgunned, was now adrift in a sea of jamming so dense that even primitive radio waves couldn't penetrate. It was a standard tactic: isolate, then obliterate. "Their communications are dead, Commander," a Xylosian tactical officer reported, his mandibles clicking in a gesture of smugness. "They cannot call for reinforcements. They are blind and mute." Thrax studied the holographic display. The human vessel was a small, battered arrowhead compared to the sleek, organic curves of his own ship and the two smaller cruisers flanking it. They had chased the human ship from the edge of the contested Perseus Vale, herding it towards this dead zone. "The human captain is stubborn," Thrax mused, his voice a low rumble. "But stubbornness is no shield. Hail them on an open channel. Give them one chance to surrender." The attempt was met with silence. The humans, as expected, did not respond. "They cannot even receive us, Commander," the officer reminded him. "Of course. Prepare to fire on my mark. Target their propulsion first. I want them dead in the void." On board the Last Stand, the situation was dire. Alarms flashed silently on consoles, their sounds swallowed by the vacuum of space, but their meaning clear. The ship shuddered as another proximity round from a Xylosian fighter scorched past their hull. Lieutenant Leo Okonkwo, the ship's communications officer, wiped sweat from his brow. His station was a graveyard of dead signals. Every frequency, every quantum band, every subspace channel was choked with the Xylosians' relentless jamming. "Captain, they're hailing us," Leo said, not because he heard it, but because a light on his board flickered weakly. "Or trying to, it's just more noise." Captain Alara Vance stood rigid, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. She was a compact woman with a core of neutronium, a veteran of a dozen frontier skirmishes. She saw the Xylosian dreadnought's weapon ports glow with building energy. "They're about to fire. Helm, all power to evasive maneuvers. We need to break their targeting solution." The Last Stand lurched, its engines screaming as it dove beneath the plane of the Xylosian formation. But the two cruisers were already moving to cut them off. It was a classic pincer movement. In a few moments, they would be in a crossfire they couldn't escape. "They're jamming everything," Leo repeated, frustration bleeding into his voice. "We can't even send a simple distress ping. It's like shouting into a hurricane." Vance's jaw tightened. She had faced impossible odds before, but this wasn't about winning. It was about survival, about getting one message out. One single, solitary message. She looked at Leo. He was young, but he was clever. He had a way of seeing systems not for what they were, but for what they could be. "What about light?" she asked suddenly. Leo blinked. "Captain?" "Light. It's an electromagnetic wave, just like radio. Their jamming is focused on our standard comm frequencies. Can we use our targeting lasers? Modulate them?" Leo's mind, a complex web of technical knowledge, began to spin. The main communications array was fried, rendered useless. But the ship was studded with other emitters. The LiDAR for navigation, the targeting designators for the point defense cannons, even the low-power lasers used for hull inspection. They were all just light. "The jamming is broad spectrum for comms," he said slowly, the idea taking shape. "But it's not jamming everything. They can't. They'd blind their own sensors. The laser designators, they're narrow beam, high intensity. We could pulse them, on and off. We could..." "Send Morse code," Vance finished for him, a grim smile touching her lips. The oldest digital signal in human history. It was absurd. A desperate last-ditch idea from the age of sail translated into the vacuum of space. But it was all they had. "The nearest human patrol is in the next system over, near the Helios colony," Vance said, her voice crisp and commanding. "If we can just get their attention... Leo, can you do it?" Leo was already working, his fingers flying across a secondary console that controlled the ship's sensor and targeting suite. He bypassed the main comms, routing power directly to the hull's forward targeting laser. It was a fat beam of coherent light designed to paint enemy ships for missiles. He could control its pulse. "I can try, Captain, but it's a needle. The beam is tight. I have to aim it almost perfectly at the jump point where a patrol might emerge. And they have to be looking." "Then we'd better give them something to look for," Vance said. "Helm, bring us about. Point our nose directly at the Helios jump point. Maximum thrust. Let's give Leo a steady platform." The last stand swung around, presenting its bow to the distant, empty point in space. The maneuver exposed their flank, but it also focused their only remaining communication tool directly at their only hope. On the Indomitable, Commander Thrax saw the human ship's puzzling maneuver. "Are they trying to flee? Their engines are pointed right at us. They're presenting a full broadside. Idiocy. They're just making themselves an easier target. All batteries, fire!" A barrage of plasma bolts and kinetic projectiles lanced from the Xylosian ships. The last stand's automated point defense cannons roared to life, a desperate staccato of fire that shredded a portion of the incoming attack. But not all of it. The ship shuddered violently as two plasma bolts slammed into its armored flank. Alarms screamed for real this time, the sound filling the bridge. "Hull breach on decks 7 and 8! Casualties reported!" the damage control officer yelled. "Leo, how long?" Vance demanded, gripping her armrest as the ship shook again. "I'm sending it now, Captain," Leo said, his voice strained with concentration. He had programmed the targeting laser. It would pulse a repeating pattern over and over, the standard military distress call. Not a complex data stream, just a simple, universal signal. 3 short pulses, 3 long pulses, 3 short pulses. SOS. A beam of invisible infrared light carrying a message of desperation lanced out from the human ship, piercing the electronic chaos and racing across the silent void. The Xylosian cruisers closed in, their fire becoming more accurate. The last stand was taking a pounding. Its shields were down to 15%. Another few minutes of this and they'd be nothing but scrap. "They're hailing us again," a Xylosian tactical officer said. "Or trying to. The human ship is firing a low-power targeting laser at empty space. It's erratic, pulsing." Thrax frowned. "A targeting laser? At nothing? Is their guidance system damaged? Are they trying to lure us into thinking they have reinforcements?" "Unknown, Commander. It is a very primitive signal, just a simple on-off pattern. It's repeating." Thrax stared at the holographic image of the human ship. It was a dying animal, lashing out. But this was different. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a shield, it was a voice. A primitive, flickering voice in the darkness. He felt a flicker of something he didn't recognize. It wasn't fear, it was respect, for a species that even in its death throes refused to be silent. "It's a message," he said quietly. "They're signaling." "To whom? Their fleet is hours away, no one can hear them." "They're not signaling for help right now," Thrax said, his understanding growing. "They're signaling for the future, a record, a testament. Fire! End this!" The Xylosian ships opened fire with everything they had. In the Helios system, a routine patrol was nearing its end. The UNS Vigilant, a fast cruiser, was making its final sweep before heading back to base. Its sensor operator, Ensign Rita Chen, was half asleep, her eyes scanning automated reports. The jump point from the Perseus Veil was quiet. It had been quiet for weeks. A flicker appeared on her screen, a single anomalous data point. She almost dismissed it as sensor noise, but the system flagged it again. And again, a pattern. "Sir," she said, her voice hesitant, "I'm picking up a strange optical signal from the Perseus jump point. It's very faint, extremely narrow band." The captain of the Vigilant, a grizzled man named Kor, walked over. "What kind of signal?" It's pulsing, sir, on and off. It's repeating a pattern. She ran it through the computer. The computer, designed for complex quantum encryption and subspace harmonics, took a full 3 seconds to identify the simple, age-old pattern. "Sir," Rita breathed, her eyes widening, "it's Morse code. It's an SOS, and it's carrying a ship's ident. It's the last stand." Kor's face hardened. The last stand was supposed to be on a deep reconnaissance mission. They were hours outside of any support range. "Sound General Quarters, all hands to battle stations, jump us through now, and get me a fleet status update. I want to know who's in range to back us up." The Vigilant leaped into the jump point, emerging into the chaos of the battle. The scene that greeted them was one of savage destruction. The last stand was a burning hulk, its hull shattered, atmosphere venting in plumes of frozen crystal. Around it, like wolves circling a dying bear, were 3 Xylosian warships, their weapons still glowing with recent fire. But the Xylosians hadn't been expecting company. They had been so focused on their prey, so confident in their jamming, that they were completely surprised when the Vigilant dropped into their midst, weapons hot. "All battery, fire at will! Target the cruisers first!" Kor roared. The battle was short and brutal. The Vigilant, fresh and fully armed, tore into the distracted Xylosian cruisers. One exploded instantly, its reactor breached. The other spun away, crippled. The indomitable, Thrax's dreadnought, was larger and more powerful, but it was caught off guard. It managed to land a few hits on the Vigilant before disengaging, its commander wisely choosing to retreat and regroup rather than face a fresh enemy with an unknown support fleet. As the Xylosian ship jumped away, the Vigilant moved to assist the last stand. Rescue shuttles launched, racing towards the wreckage. They found survivors, huddled in breached compartments, clinging to life in the cold void. They found Captain Vance, wounded but alive, directing the evacuation. And they found Leo Okonkwo, still at his post, his console dark, his hands resting on the controls of the targeting laser he had used to scream into the void. Later, in the medbay of the Vigilant, a bandaged Leo was debriefed by Captain Kor. "Ensign Chen here says you used a targeting laser to send Morse code," Kor said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and profound respect. "Through full-spectrum jamming." Leo managed a weak smile. "It was the captain's idea. Light is light. They couldn't jam everything, and we had to try. We couldn't just die silently." Kor was silent for a long moment. He had fought the Xylosians for years. He knew their technology, their tactics. They were formidable. But they had a weakness, a blind spot. They understood warfare as a series of systems to be overwhelmed. They didn't understand the desperate, creative, stubborn ingenuity of a species that would use a targeting laser as a telegraph key. "You turned a weapon into a voice," Kor finally said. "They won't understand that. They'll analyze the battle data for centuries and they still won't understand it. Because it's not in their database. It's not a tactic. It's just human." The story of the last stand and its laser-borne SOS spread through the fleet like wildfire. It became a legend, a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. Military academies would study it for generations, not as a tactical maneuver, but as a case study in determination. Civilian scientists marveled at the elegant simplicity of the solution. For the Xylosians, it was a source of bafflement and a growing, grudging fear. They could jam any frequency, disrupt any signal, but they couldn't stop a human from shining a light. They couldn't silence a voice that refused to be quiet. They had learned a terrifying lesson. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its ships, its guns, or its technology. It was its will to be heard. And in the vast, silent darkness of space, that was the most powerful signal of all.